Hello, everyone. I hope that you are well. You are listening to the Mom Care Coach, and I am your host, Victoria Mattia. And today we are talking about everything perimenopause when it comes to being an autism mom and how you can thrive during this season. I am going to give you my top 10 tips. Now, I myself, I'm 48 years old. I am definitely in the throes of perimenopause, and I have learned a few things on how to allow this season to be really, really helpful and informative for me. What do I mean by that? I mean that during this time, this season in your life, I believe that it is a check engine light time, if you will. You know that when your check engine light comes on, it is time for you to check the engine in your car and make sure everything is flowing as it should be. And ideally, you want to have been taking care of your car in the proper way up to this point, correct? But when you see that check engine light, you also know it is definitely time to get it into a mechanic and see what's going on. Have a look under the hood, make sure everything is working properly. In perimenopause, it is a time that doctors are saying now it can last between 5 years to 12 years on average. For some people, it's a little longer. Some people it's a little bit shorter, but that is the average, especially here in the U.S. So what I had noticed for myself, I think I started my body started to gear up for perimenopause at the end of my 30s. I started to notice less energy. I had to work a little harder to have that energy that I used to, where it came very easily. I know on average they're saying anywhere between ages 35 to 52 is average for perimenopause. Anytime during that age group, it can happen. Sometimes it can happen a little earlier and sometimes a little bit later. But again, here in the U.S., that is average. And I have learned a few things. I am 48. I've learned a few things that can be really helpful when you're trying to have the season to be very helpful and meaningful for you. When you just kind of look at it, when you're really close to it, like you're in the thick of it, it can feel a little overwhelming. But if you can zoom out and see everything that's going on, you can see how God designed this time to actually be really beneficial for you so that you can have a really awesome time during your menopause and post-menopause era. So if you don't know, menopause starts 1 year after that day that you have stopped your period. So if you stopped your period, the last period you had July 2024, then July 2025, that is a full year. Then that day, my friend, you are now in menopause. And then after that 1 day, it is called post-menopause. Now, during the time of perimenopause, before you actually start menopause, you want to really make sure that you are taking care of your body to the best that you can so that you can avoid a lot of the pitfalls that people can accidentally go into when it comes to menopause. When we think of menopause, that is, anywhere between the 50s and over on average. And so for a lot of people at that time, they will start to have lower bone density. You can start to you have to really take care of your body so that you're not, breaking any bones, because that can have some long-term effects that can be very difficult and detrimental as you age. You want to make sure that your brain health is in tip-top shape so that it will be ready for that next season, your menopause, post-menopause era. You want to make sure that, you are getting enough nutrition and you are getting the kind of nutrition that is going to support your body and your brain health long term. So I have these top tips that I have found really, really helpful for myself. And I will say, I remember, I'd have to say I was probably about 37, 38. and I started to struggle with exhaustion. Now, we as autism moms, that is not new for us. We can, at different seasons of our motherhood, can struggle with exhaustion and burnout. That's why I think it's so important to focus on your 4 intentional needs. However, that is not something I knew about at that time in my late 30s. It was something that I created much later because of the experience that I had in my 30s, where I started to struggle with exhaustion, brain fog, overwhelm. I had to actually start to work out in order to maintain the weight that was so easily maintained back in my 20s. I had to be more intentional when it came to meal planning and the kinds of snacks that I wanted for myself and my family. I had to really focus on these things, and it has paid dividends. But I will tell you a story. Back during 2020, that is when everything really came to a halt for me, not just in the world as we knew it at that time, but also physically and emotionally and mentally. I really started to focus on what was going on, and I was really struggling. During that time, I used to listen to a podcast that I still listen to now, by Dr. Marisa Snyder. I've talked about her a few times on this podcast. And she was giving some tips on self-care that was really helpful. But I remember thinking, okay, I need to make this autism-friendly family, to make these tips work a little bit different so that they will actually be able to work in my life. And I remember some of the things that I had to put in place. I had to have bookends in my day. I had to have a solid morning routine and a solid nighttime routine. And I also needed to be really intentional of what was going on during the day. Now, as a homeschool mom, I'm home all day. And so sometimes if I'm not, careful, it can become more fluid. There aren't certain periods of the day that I do certain things. They can kind of get all mushed together, because technically you can homeschool anytime during the day, right? But I have found that having a nice schedule, not necessarily that it's too rigid, but having a schedule was really helpful for me, especially having a child on the autism spectrum that really thrive from routine. But even though that was really great, I still struggled with my own self-care, just because the needs of my children, especially my kiddo that was on that spectrum, he had very, very high needs, as well as he needed a lot of help in a lot of different areas, from personal care, hygiene, cooking, cleaning, making sure all of the things were happening in our household, as well as supporting him when he was having meltdowns and helping to avoid that to, the extent that I could, by putting certain systems in place that was helpful for him. So he knew what to expect during the day. But over the years of not focusing on my 4 intentional needs, sleep, nutrition, mindset, and movement. So over the years of not enough sleep for years at a time, because he struggled with that for so much. And it wasn't until we really got certain supplements in place that really changed. Until that time, I have to tell you, it was really, really hard going when it came to sleep. So after so many years of not getting enough sleep, having my nutrition as a hit and miss, meaning the food that I was actually consuming may have been very nutrient dense. The problem was I wasn't always sitting down and actually having a meal. Sometimes I would eat and sometimes I wouldn't, simply because when I would sit down and try to have that meal as a family, having my kiddo on the spectrum, he was like, he'd eat a couple bites and then he was up walking around, running around, doing all the things in the household, which made it very difficult for me to be able to sit down and have a meal. And so I had to come up with some ways that I could guarantee myself having meals so that I would not be missing out on the nutrition that I needed. But it wasn't until 2020 when I realized, wow, I have really let myself go in the way of focusing on my self-care. Like I said, I was not eating the best because I really wasn't eating enough. And then I wasn't sleeping the best because that was still really, really difficult for us. And then, I wasn't really getting a lot of movement in my life, and my mindset was always overthinking every little thing. So I had to get all of that under control, and there were several things that I did, and that is what we're going to talk about now. Okay, so number one, the first tip I had to take care of was getting enough protein. So Dr. Gabrielle Lyon says that it's important for women to get 1 gram of protein per pound. So if you weigh 150 pounds, that you're wanting to get 150 grams of protein on average. Now, you, of course, can, look that up, and different doctors say different things. However, it is similar across the board of that is how you should be getting, how much protein you should be getting in your life. So that is one of the things that I had to really get in charge of. That's why I really love the protein powder that I have. It has 25 grams of protein, and it is a vegan protein, so I don't have to worry about, am I allergic to the whey? Am I allergic to the eggs? Am I allergic to different things? I don't have to worry about that. And it is a very tasty protein, and I can give that protein to not just myself, but my children as well. And, those busy mornings or afternoons where you're running about, it's nice to be able to have a shake. You can take it, put it in a shake form, shake it up, and you're actually able to, have that meal on the go if you need to, or even at home. For me, I like to focus to make sure I'm getting enough greens as well. So I will pack that blender. I have a Vitamix blender, pack it with lots of kale or spinach, and then have a healthy fat in there with it, maybe a little bit of nut butter or coconut oil, and then my scoop of protein powder. I also like to add in extra fiber, so I will actually put in some flaxseed as well. Flaxseed is really awesome for the perimenopause years because flaxseed is high in omega-3s, which helps with brain health. It is a healthy fat, and because of the high content of fiber in it, it helps to keep you fuller longer as well. Okay, so that is about protein. Number 2, I'm having apple cider vinegar water before my meals. That helps with blood sugar health, and that is something that I also started. It also can help with or support weight management also. And so basically it's a couple tablespoons in 8 ounces or more of water. I like to add a little bit of stevia in it, and it's a really delicious drink. But science have proven that having that right before a meal can actually help with normal blood sugar balance, keeping that as it should be. It is normal to have a little bit of spiking after you've eaten a meal, but when you're having high spikes and low crashes, that's when the blood sugar can be out of control, and you don't want that. You want to really support your insulin. And in perimenopause, it is very common for people to start having insulin fluctuations. And so that is something we want to really take care of, because as I mentioned before, they are calling dementia and Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes is traditionally a diagnosis that's given to children that are having issues with their insulin, that doctors are giving that diagnosis. But type 2 is one, it's not that it's inherited, it is created by often difficulty in lifestyle with stress, not eating properly, and eating a lot of sugar, or eating a lot of foods that turn into sugar in the body, and you can look that up as well. But type 3 is what doctors are calling Alzheimer's and dementia. So we really want to make sure that we are taking care of that. Another thing, number 3, having lemon water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. That helps to support digestion, proper digestion and elimination. That is something that is really important during that time of perimenopause as well, because a lot of times digestion starts to slow down during that time, and you can have extra bloating, not proper elimination or partial elimination. A lot of times people start to notice different irregularities when it comes to digestion, also issues with their liver, maybe not detoxing fully. That also is common during perimenopause. And lemon water on an empty stomach first thing in the morning can be very helpful. So fresh lemon, take a half a lemon or a whole lemon and squeeze that, preferably organic, in warm lemon water, or you can make a little drink out of it, meaning like you can have lemon water, a lemon in warm lemon water, or getting it in your body where it's not too hot but not too cold is what is traditionally been used, especially in Ayurvedic medicine, and it can be very helpful for that, helping your body, prepping it for food. And then also, if you wanted to have, to create something overnight, having like some cucumber slices in it, some mint leaves in it, and then setting that out, when you get up until you're ready to have that drink, squeeze that lemon in it. Sometimes I will mix the lemon and ACV in my water too. You don't have to, but it's an option. I like to add some stevia in it to sweeten it up a bit. There's a lot of different sweeteners nowadays. Just make sure it's something that is healthy for you and helpful for your body, not to spike. Everybody is different. Okay. Number 4, making sure that you are getting enough water. That is something that is really, really important. And it's even important, when we're young and when we get older. But one of the things that can happen as we get older is we lose the desire to actually have water. We don't actually feel thirsty. And it's really interesting, when we are young, a lot of times we'll feel thirsty, but for some of us, as we age, if we're not careful, we can lose the ability to have that, in our body of feeling thirst, and that is not good. So we want to make sure that we are hydrating our body as we should and doing it in the right way, in the right quantity. Okay, number 5, no grains or sugar, or at least minimizing grains and sugar. That is really important because we don't actually need to have sugar in its refined state. We can actually eat things that are sweet, like fruits, and everything has a little bit of sugar in nature anyway. If you actually look at that, when it comes to fruits and vegetables, things can naturally be sweet, especially when it's coming from plants. However, when we add in sugar, often it is stripped of its minerals, and that affects how quickly it goes into our bloodstream and how it can often spike our insulin. And that is what we're trying to avoid. So we don't want that. And unfortunately, a lot of the modern processed grains turns into sugar in the body. And we have to be really mindful of that when we are trying to keep our blood sugar balanced. Another thing that is really helpful in understanding is eating order. This is something that I'm hearing more doctors talk about, how it affects our insulin levels. So, sometimes when people think of no sugar ever, it can be really, hard for them, especially when there are holidays and birthdays and vacations and everything. So I have heard different doctors talk about eating things in proper eating order to help minimize those blood sugar spikes. And so what I have heard, you want to have your greens first. So like if you are having a shake or something or a salad, you're wanting to eat the greens first. And then the next step, if you're having steamed veggies as well, maybe you're going to steam some Brussels sprouts or some broccoli or cauliflower. That is the next thing you would eat in that order. And then the next thing you would eat would be protein. So you're noticing I'm not having these really carb heavy items yet, right? So you're having your greens, like a salad. And traditionally years ago, they would serve you a salad first before you would have your main meal in restaurants. And that is still healthy for our body. So having that salad first, then some steamed veggies, and then having your protein. that is that order that you're wanting to have. And then after all of that, you can have a little bit of carbs, and they have noticed that there's things that we can do so it doesn't spike our blood sugar as much. Maybe like a half a baked potato or half a sweet potato, or even they have been doing some studies on rice. Now, I am not going to tell you that I am a rice person, because I am not. Still, for me, I try to eliminate and minimize grains as much as possible. But there has been some research out that it creates a resistant starch when after you have cooked the rice or quinoa or even oatmeal and put it in the refrigerator and let it chill, and then take it out and eat it, making sure you're having it with healthy fat like some coconut oil or ghee. If you eat dairy, or like a healthy butter, if you eat butter, or like grass-fed. And there has been research that it actually will not spike your insulin as much. But there is some still spikes involved. So you have to really be careful of that. Do your own research. I am not a proponent of offering people grains, but I do understand that sometimes at certain times of the year, people are trying to think of which is the best option. So I like to just share the information that I have learned. Okay, so eating order is important. Try to avoid grains and sugar as much as possible. Okay. Number 6, we have intermittent fasting. Now, I always direct people to Dr. Mindy Peltz's book, Fast Like a Girl. It is an amazing book, and she has so much research in that book, and she gives all the different types of ways of fasting. And if that is something you're interested in, yes, do read the book. And then, of course, if you're needing more support, I can help you through that, as I am a certified life and health coach, if you are needing some support in that as well. Intermittent fasting is something that has been really helpful for me, but there are different ways of fasting, and I don't do it throughout the month. Like during the time that I'm having a period, I am not having that as a part of fasting. Other than the fact that I do believe, and research does support, that everyone can do a 12-hour fast overnight from that last time that you're eating, that you have your dinner, if it's like around 6 or 7 o'clock, and then waiting until 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning to make a full 12 hours. And I have heard doctors support that as well. But from that, if you are doing a 14, 16, or 18-hour fast, when it comes to intermittent fasting, you want to make sure that you are in a season that will work for you. And there's different things that affect that. And I think that may be a future podcast episode, because we want to do it in a healthy way. You don't want to cause, more stress on your body, because fasting is a stressor. However, there are ways of doing it where it can actually support your health goals. Okay, so the next one we have, number 7, weight-bearing exercises. This is when you are lifting heavy weights. They have noticed and said in research that lifting heavy weights, like freestanding weights or, the dumbbells, different kinds of weights specifically for women during the perimenopause age, can be very helpful in, avoiding the bone and muscle loss that can happen as we age. We want to, the best of our abilities, avoid that. And there's a lot of things we can do out there. And one of those really big things that we can do has to do with weight-bearing exercises, lifting weights. And what's interesting, research shows that it doesn't have to be a lot of reps for a really long period of time. 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week with heavy weights, not too many reps, like 6, 7, 8, 9 reps is enough for many women to help support their bones and their muscles during this time, so that as they go on to menopause and postmenopause, they can have a really effective and lively season. Okay, so number 8, okay, having the sun first thing on your skin in the morning. Going back to how I started this conversation, I found that was something that was really, really helpful for me. But as I mentioned, my oldest kiddo was really struggling with elopement. So I had to get creative. And for me, for quite some time, I had to use something that I call a sun box, which is like a vitamin D plug-in light. And it was really helpful, and that is what I used for some time. I was making that autism friendly family by making a few tweaks to what was recommended, but tweaking it in a way that it could work in my family and in the season that I was in. And I still use that vitamin D light. It's still really effective now. I am able to have some walks in the morning. But when I was not, that was definitely what I was using. And sometimes I still have to use it out of necessity, even if I'm wanting to do walking, just to support myself when my family's having a hard time, with the elopement issue. We have gotten that a lot under control nowadays, but there are some times that can be a little bit tricky, and it's nice to have options in your life. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about, number 9, Pilates. Pilates I have found that is really, really helpful for flexibility. And for those of us that are wanting to have other options besides yoga, me personally, I don't do yoga, just for my beliefs and everything like that. So I don't do that, but having those slow movements such as Pilates is really helpful for flexibility and really helpful for as we age. It is one of those things when it comes to supporting my 4 intentional needs that I like to do daily. Sometimes I don't just because of time, but I really notice the difference when I'm able to do it daily. Sometimes as we age, our lower back, especially as women, if you've given birth, it can get a little bit sticky, as I call it. And, you need to move that area to create that flexibility throughout your body, but especially like the lower back, the knees, the joints, the hips. Those are the things that if we do not create that flexibility during this time in our life, later on it can cause issues. And that's when a lot of times you get, you hear stories of people really struggling and breaking a hip and breaking different bones because there isn't enough flexibility there, and, wanting to avoid that muscle and bone loss, with our weight-bearing exercises. And when you're coupling the weight-bearing exercises and then having a couple times a week where you're doing the Pilates to help with that flexibility, it creates a system that can be really, really helpful as we age. And then number 10, we want to make sure that we are taking times to rest, to relax, doing things that we enjoy. I know for myself, I love reading personal development books, but also I do need to sometimes watch things like all my Hallmark movies, or, watching or reading a book that's fiction, like Jane Austen or something. Just making sure that you are creating balance in your life and you're taking time to relax. And we as autism moms, we are always busy. We have so much on our plates. And as I mentioned before, my brain was always like, going and thinking. And you need to have times where you can kind of even relax that overworking brain through, as I mentioned before, breath work. I have a whole episode on just breath work and how helpful that is. And I even have a time where I lead you through a breath work exercise for that particular episode. So you can look that up. You can see it physically on my YouTube channel. If you're wanting to be able to see me and follow along, you can do that as well. So those are my top tips, top 10 tips for really enjoying the perimenopausal time. I know it can be challenging, balancing those hormones, hot flashes, and all of those things. And I have to tell you that I have certain essential oils that I will use to help with that. I also, if you're wearing breathable clothing, that helps with that as well. But nutrition is probably my number one thing that I use to help eliminate those, hot flashes and those kinds of things. So you want to just be really mindful. And then just as a bonus tip, I would tell you to really watch your supplementation, making sure that you're getting what you need in food, but also supplements can really support your health as well. Because even if you're eating 100% organic, the soil is not as nutritious as it used to be, even 50 years ago, definitely 100 years ago and more. And so because of that, a lot of times we do need to supplement with some really good nutrition that can help and support us during this time in our lives. And so you want to just keep all of those things in proper perspective and understand it doesn't have to be this really horrible transition. It can be a really smooth and beautiful transition, but it does take some work and a little bit of forethought as we are going through that time period. So I hope that this episode has been really helpful and effective, and maybe you heard a few things that you hadn't thought of before. Also, I wanted to just mention the one that I mentioned when it comes to having sun first thing in the morning, like sun feasting, I like to call it, having that on your skin. It helps with your melatonin and your circadian rhythms, all of that. It's really helpful. And while you're outside, if it is possible where you live and in the area that you're going for that walk to get that sun, grounding is also really, really helpful. That is something I also started at that time, and it was so beneficial for me when I would go outside also. So I hope this episode has been great for you. Please let me know in the comments how you feel about it. And then also, if you're needing more support, don't forget I'm able to support you through coaching, through my online health shop. Just email me and let me know how I can support you. My email is in the description box, of course. So I look forward to talking to you again next time. Thank you so much. Goodbye.